my goal was to go there for a couple days, look around, and then possibly, and if things looked okay, maybe try to apply for political asylum, or basically I was thinking of to continue moving towards Toronto if I had enough money for gas to get quite a distance, and I was sure that I could be resourceful and come up with other ways to get to where we needed to be in this kind of an emergency. I had less than $400 with me, but as I had stated when I first went to Canada, it was basically enough money to go there for a couple days of looking around. And when it comes to quote-unquote insufficient funds for political asylum, there's no such thing as insufficient funds when somebody is asking for political asylum. You don't tell a refugee and somebody who's fleeing torture from one country, I'm sorry, you have to go back to your country because you don't have enough money. You have insufficient funds. Everything that Canada did and some of those their officials did was just, it was corrupt, it was a lie, and what they did was as illegal and conducive to torture as what the United States has done. And they colluded with people who tortured us. And we were tortured there as well. Did not just quit when we were in the United States. So the first woman at the border seemed to be nice, and you know, she said, state your plan or intention. I said, we're just going to look around at some things for a couple days, and that was it. And she said, okay, you know, have a good time. Any fruit? And, you know, asked all the questions she's supposed to ask. She looked at all of my ID and information that I gave her. I gave her everything, including the parental thing. And after that, I think I gave her the parental thing. If I didn't, I had it with me in case someone asked about it later. But I gave all of the documents that are required at the border. So then we went through, and I didn't realize that Penticton, the town that we stopped in, was a town that has basically their hospital worked with Central Washington Hospital. So Canadian doctors from this Penticton, Canada hospital, they were commuting back and forth between there and Central Washington Hospital. And Wenatchee doctors were going over to the Penticton Hospital as well. It was about an hour-and-a-half drive. And so there were Canadian and U.S. medical professionals showing up at each other's hospitals and doing kind of a joint agreement kind of work. And they were also connected to the University of Washington, which does all kinds of research and illegal things, actually. I mean, I don't have a bad opinion about everybody that's gone to University of Washington. And the first person who took the x-ray of my pelvis even agreed that it was from childbirth damages and everything. I'm sure that there are a lot of very good people who go there. However, some of the policies and things that they've done to human beings is illegal. So here my son and I were in Penticton, and I noticed that I was being watched again. But one of the first things that I did is I went to a grocery store with my son. Well, first of all, once we got in across the border, like as I was saying, my son would jolt sometimes and shriek and cry out after getting hit by something, basically like aerospace defense technology. I mean, literally they're following our car while we drive. So that happened maybe once while we drove to Canada. And then I expected it, or maybe it didn't happen the entire time that I was in the U.S. and then on the way to driving to Canada. I do remember that it was after I crossed the Canadian border, I was shocked to find that we were driving on this Canadian highway, and all of a sudden my son was doing the same thing that he had been doing in the U.S. all of a sudden I felt it and he felt it at the same time. This blast, which caused extreme pain in me, but I'm an adult so I can control my reactions, like my verbal reactions. He's a child, so he was always, you know, shrieking or uttering something when he was also hit, and that was how I knew that it was happening to him at the same time that it was happening to me, because I could feel it. I wasn't making a reaction verbally, but I could feel what was happening. And then my son was verbally expressing pain when at the same time that I could feel this physical pain. So he was feeling pain too, and he was having an involuntary reaction and a vocalization of that pain. And when I noticed that that was happening, I was really shocked, because I had thought that maybe it was somebody in East Wenatchee that was across from our house that was directing technology towards us. So at that time I really thought it must be somebody across the river, somebody across the road, somebody in some area that's maybe kind of close in location that's doing this. And then I found out as we were driving on this freeway in Canada that our car was being followed, and my son and I were being targeted and tortured while we were driving. And that was in Canada. That was Canadian territory. That was Canadian space, or airwaves, or airspace and land space. And I'm sure that anybody knew that I had crossed the border, because they were following us everywhere. Not only that, I didn't know I had microchips in my body. So it's not like they didn't know when I was talking to the Canadian Border Patrol woman. It's not like they didn't know where I was going or where I was. So my son and I were tortured in Canada while we were driving on the road. Then we got to a grocery store, and in this grocery store my son was looking at some different things, and I let him look around, and while I was also looking around, he was very close to me, but he was, you know, walking. Basically this camera just went blurry, so he was walking at the time. I mean, as I said, he was already running. So he was walking around looking at things, and I remember he was off to my right, and I was to his left, and there was a man, an adult grown man in front of us, who was interested in observing my son. And then all of a sudden, while I noticed this man is staring at my son suddenly shrieked out with that same horrible vocalization of pain, of suddenly being jolted with some kind of pain. And I immediately looked at that man, who smirked. And he basically made fun of me. He smirked at me, and he made fun of me, and laughed just, I don't know how to imitate his expression, but it was kind of like, and I'm not a good actor or actress. I feel like I would just do such a horrible job at trying to show what he looked like, but it sounds, you have to trust somebody and where they're coming from when you trust their perceptions of people's their expressions. Because someone can say, well, he looked like he was, and I'm really being tortured right now, so that's why I'm putting my hand to my face. So you have to trust that when someone says a person is acting a certain way, that, you know, the description is not just a delusional over-exaggeration. But it was sort of like, I can't do it. I'm not very good at this. I don't know how to describe it. It's like his lip went up, and he was laughing, and he just looked at me like, I can't do it. I mean, I feel horrible even trying. I feel like it's, I don't know how to describe the look of hate, because I don't feel hate right now. Just staring at me intently, and then sarcastically smiling about my son being tortured. Just kind of like, for example, he's looking over here at my son and looking at this. And then he looks over at me. I mean, he was just like, and I'm doing everything wrong, and I don't know how to describe it, but when you see an expression that's just kind of not your normal smile or blasé expression, you know they have more than just a passing interest in you and your child. It wasn't like he wasn't acting like I was some stranger that he didn't know at all, who just happened to be in a Canadian grocery store. He acted like he knew who I was and who my son was, and he was happy that my son was being tortured. And he thought it was great that I was witnessing my son being tortured, and he got some kind of satisfaction out of seeing my worry and concern over my child. There were other people who were in Canada who showed up in grocery stores. That one person actually that looked a lot like this James Middleton, but with the curly hair. I think I saw a photo one time where he had very, very curly hair. And a lot of the people looked sort of French. And there were definitely, what I was shocked by is how many people in Canada were interested in me and I could tell didn't like me, and they were in their 20s. And I thought, why are there people in their 20s that don't like me, that are following me around from Canada? And I always remember that. I remember some of the people that were there. There was a guy with his sister, or his girlfriend, or whoever, the one with the bushy hair, curly hair. And he followed us around on a different occasion, not that night, but on a different occasion when my son and I were in a grocery store. And there were other individuals, and I just, for the older individuals, I thought they were maybe connected to people who were torturing us. And for the younger ones who were in their 20s, I really didn't understand what the connection was, why they were interested in me at all, and why I was being followed in Canada. Why did Canadians even care about me? I mean, who in Canada would know who I was and care at all? And some of those individuals, I think, showed up basically like the 20-something people. They showed up after I already met some people from Canada who knew where I was going when I was going there. So I guess if there were people who had thought that they wanted to know who I was, or they knew who I was, had a reason to observe me or stalk me, they were most likely showing up after being told that I might be in a certain location at a certain time. So first we were in this grocery store, and this happened with that man, and I really couldn't believe it. I saw that my son was tortured right then and there in a Canadian grocery store. So we were tortured on the Canadian freeway, and we were also tortured in the grocery store, and that was not the last time that we were tortured in Canada. And I need to take a quick break and then finish some of the rest of this.